I have a theory that anybody who reads the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and does not feel terrified is reading it like a Dajjal and is reading it wrong. I'll explain what I mean. And you will see the parallel here. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sits and writes a letter to the Roman Emperor and the Persian Emperor and tells them, Aslim taslim, become Muslim. And they cannot believe that a man from the middle of the desert has written them a letter and told the two mighty emperors that they should embrace Islam and hear his message. I don't think it's far-fetched that the Muslim today would have said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, we write a letter to the emperors and Ya Rasulullah, I love you and I love your message, but this is Rome. This is Persia. And we're a bunch of tribes in the Arab nation. Realistic or not realistic? Realistic. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Mecca has no army and he has no wealth. But he goes out in the middle of the Kaaba, preaches his message, and they start hitting him and his Sahaba. Hamza radiallahu anhu walks in, looks at them and says, I haven't read much about the Palestinians. I haven't read much about what the message is. But I'm seeing an overwhelming force beating up an inferior force. And my fitra knows that it doesn't matter what the situation is, there's something wrong here. Abu Jahl says, they are going against. So Hamza says, well, come after me, I have power. Hamza would go home and say, I didn't mean it when I said I joined the Prophet Muhammad. But then I started looking into it. And when I started looking into it, I realized that before October 7th, I believed Israel was a firm ally. After October 7th, I didn't like what Israel is doing to those Palestinians. That doesn't come without Sahaba going to the middle of the Kaaba and ignoring those who said, what's the point? We have no power. What's the point? It doesn't make a difference. What's the point? It's not moving the same way that you want it to move. When Umar ibn Khattab becomes Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ makes a dua, Allahumma izz al-Islam bi ahad al-Umarain, right? So who are the two Umars? Umar ibn Khattab and Umar ibn Hisham, Abu Jahl. When Umar ibn Khattab becomes Muslim, you could hear the takbirat on the streets. Everyone is celebrating. Now, I know everybody here right now has that spiritual, Umar Khattab became Muslim. Hang on, open the other eye for a second. Ignore your affection for Islam for a second. The following day, Sahaba was still beaten up. The following day, the Sahaba was still persecuted. The following day, the same treatment they were getting from Quraysh continued. Is it realistic that somebody would have said, why are you guys all celebrating that Umar became Muslim when look at your situation? It doesn't change anything. Is that something that somebody would have said? Beware, ya ibadallah, of words that sound like hypocrites. Beware of the words that sound like, what do your 300, what could they do about the 1,000 that have come and gathered against you? Why are you guys going out there? You don't have the power to do so. You need to change your tactics. What's the point in this dawah that you're giving, not for 11 months, for 13 years with no army and no wealth? What's the point when only a handful of people are becoming Muslim? Why do you keep doing what you're doing? Surely you need new content. Surely you need new tactics. Beware of sounding like a hypocrite without realizing. But it's controversial that Netanyahu, Blinken and Biden believe in the power of Allah more than many Muslims who pray 5 times in the masjid. I'll explain what I mean. The Muslim says that your da'wah and mobilization is not having an impact. Like the one who says, what's the point in protesting? But Netanyahu knows the power, which is why he does a press conference begging Biden to stop the encampments. Netanyahu knows the power because he spends millions to lobby to get TikTok banned in the Congress, while the Muslim tells me TikTok has no impact. The Muslim says the da'wah is not having an impact, but Blinken goes to a Muslim country to get a fatwa, to tell the Muslims don't talk about Gaza, only make dua, because if you talk about it, it will cause fitna. Blinken believes in the power of da'wah in a way many Muslims don't. Biden believes in the power of da'wah because when he gets social media to shadow ban your accounts, to shut down your accounts, to restrict your hashtags, Biden believes in the power of da'wah. He believes if it's unchecked, it will bring about revolution. He believes if it's unchecked, it will bring about change. Only the Muslim says there is no point. The Zionist believes in the power of da'wah, which is why they lobby NYPD and these others to prevent these protests from happening, to restrict them, to break the brother's arm when he goes and protests. They know the power of the da'wah when people protest. They're worried Hamza will come to the desert and say, I don't know what this issue was before, but I'm entering Islam because now I'm introduced to the injustice because of the injustice you made. The Zionist believes in the power of da'wah in a way the Muslim doesn't. The Democrats believe in the power of da'wah. They believe in it. So much so that they are worried that you will abandon them and make them lose the elections, which is why they come and meet with community leaders and they introduce anti-Islamophobia initiatives while committing genocide, and why Walz comes out yesterday and says that I will increase your representation, but Israel still has the right to self-defense. He needs to do that first statement because he believes that if they organize, they will have power. I want to prevent them from organizing by throwing them a bone that they can divide over. I want to make them feel powerless, because if they move, they will actually show power. Allah, the reason I said the seerah is frightening is because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ spent 13 years in Mecca, only 10 years in Medina. When many Muslims read the seerah, I've seen it because sometimes I teach it. I've seen it. They say they want to brush over the first 13 years, the pain of the struggle. They don't want to read through it. Sami, can we skip to the good part? Astaghfirullah al-Azim. But it's the first 13 years where the power is manifest, because he doesn't have an army like you. He doesn't have a wealth the way you don't have wealth. He doesn't have the material things that you think you need in order to make the difference. But his da'wah alone, his retweeting alone, his videos alone, his message alone flips people's hearts in such a way that Nate Silver, his name is, the New York pollster, he comes out on Twitter and says that if the Democrats lose the swing states, he says his words, and Nate Silver, قال, said, if she loses the swing states, it will be because of Gaza. Because the message of Gaza is so strong, it has flipped people's hearts in such a way that money cannot buy those hearts back. And when you look at, and McGurk and these others saying it's an exciting opportunity, we finally have a reason to expand those borders, and the best part about it is we can do it and these Muslims will still vote for us because the other side is so scary, and because, you know, there are people of Wahan. Have you read the hadith that it says in their book? They, you know, we need to make sure they will come to us and forgive us anyway. It's a win-win situation because the other side is a man with an orange tan who... Brett McGurk believes this is the golden opportunity in which we can make Israel's borders bigger, we can commit genocide, we can get rid of these Palestinians, and we can win a second term on top of it. Why not continue? And that's why the aid is so important. We will punish you. So when Kamala Harris is appointed as the candidate, what the Democrats do is this. They gather and they say, guys, we might lose in the swing states because of the genocide. Third-party candidate might get 5%, which would allow them access to federal funding, which would create a third party that would take votes away from us, etc. So I came armed with Sahih Non-Muslim. Sahih Non-Muslim is a wonderful book when you want to convince Muslims, because Muslims will read that Allah is all-powerful, but they don't believe in their ability to boycott until Sheikh CEO of McDonald's says boycott works. Allah tells them that they have power to make a difference, that their da'wah can flip hearts. But when they read the ayah, it doesn't move them. Candace Owens moves them. Hafadhaha Allah wa ra'aha. Candace Owens moves them when she says that I used to be pro-Israel and now I don't believe we should be back in the Israel. That's when you believe the power of da'wah. Not through the ayah, you believe it through Candace Owens. When Allah tells you that, you know, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ, that the one who is your enemy today, tomorrow might become your warmest ally in your fight. You read the ayah and you think, yeah, okay. But when Sheikh Tucker Carlson comes out and says, we need to cut funding to the Israelis, you say, Allah, I didn't know I had that power. Then when Kamala Harris comes out, Kamala Harris looks at both sides. I can't please both. Zionists would be angry if I stop the genocide. Muslims would be angry if I continue the genocide. So I need to calculate who's more likely to punish me. The Zionists will definitely punish me. They are ashab mabadi. They are people of principle. Zionists, you betray Israel, they punish you. There's no. But Muslims, I'm seeing their community leaders saying that even though 240,000 are killed, we have to support her. Even though Sidra's legs are blown off, we have to back her. Even though Hind Rajab 320 bullets were shot at her, we have to back her. At the ballot box, Ya Ibadallah, we must walk across the bodies of 240,000 Palestinians. Hikmah, use your brains. Tell Sidra it's hikmah. Tell Hind it's hikmah. Tell Reem it's hikmah. Tell these Palestinian refugees it's out of hikmah that I'm voting for the one who slaughtered you. It's hikmah that you don't understand, Ya Jahala. I'm voting for what's good for the ummah by rewarding the one who slaughtered you. When Kamala Harris saw saw that. She said Zionists are united in defending Israel, but the Muslims are willing to forgive. Therefore, let me gamble with them. And it got so bad, ya ibadallah, that during the debate, if you remember, when Trump said, if she wins, Israel is finished, because she hates the Arabs and she hates the Israelis, she said, I don't hate the Israelis. She said, I don't hate the Israelis. Arab, what? Many Muslims, they say to me, Sami, whoever wins in November, they're going to be pro-Israel anyway. So what's the point? I tell them, I wish you were Zionist. What? Because explain to me why the Zionist is not assured of safety, even though they know that the president will be pro-Israel. What is it that the Zionists fear in November will happen, that even if they have a pro-Israel president, it doesn't give them peace? Why did they, usually if the Zionists believed what the Muslim says, they should be relaxed. Why spend 24 million on Jamal Bowman? It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't. Why did they spend it? They spent it because they realized that their lobbying power might end up becoming a liability for Congress people and candidates, meaning that if these candidates lose because they supported genocide, they will never obey the Israeli lobby again, because what's the point of taking millions if I'm going to lose anyway? What's the point of taking millions if Biden lost anyway? What's the point of taking millions if Harris lost after taking millions of your money anyway? What's the point of taking your millions that was supposed to guarantee me victory, but now it guarantees me defeat, because whoever takes your money, it makes these Muzis come out in force at the ballot box simply to punish whoever takes your money. I'm sorry, I don't want these guys to come out and punish me. I'm not taking your money anymore. And the final point here is this. Many Muslims, they said, okay, fine. Even if I accept that the Zionist lobby might be worried about its invincibility, because they were saying, guys, and bear in mind, this isn't my analysis. Thomas Massie, the Republican congressperson, I didn't say congressperson because of the whole pronouns thing. I realized this. Congressman, okay, yeah. Yeah, Thomas Massie, in an interview with Tucker Carlson, he said, many of my colleagues would love to come out against what Israel is doing. But when I speak to them, they say there's no point because they will punish me in my own constituency. What he was saying was that they're not loyal to Zionism because they believe in it. They're loyal to Zionism because they believe that if you support Zionism, you win. If you oppose it, you lose. But what happens if for the first time in American history, a president loses because they supported Zionism? What happens if an incumbent in an area loses because they supported Zionism? I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they said to me, Sami, here it's hopeless, here it's this. You know, Greg Landsman is our, a representative, and here both sides are Zionists, and it's a Zionist stronghold. I said to them, but imagine the headline. Greg Landsman loses in Zionist stronghold for supporting Zionism. Imagine what Congress people start interpreting from that when they start saying that Zionism is now not a political asset, it's a liability because all these people ended up losing their seats for no other reason than that they supported genocide. But the final point I want to make, and the one who said it to me was a DNC insider, who said that the reason they are trying to sue these third-party candidates off the ballot box is not because they believe third party will win. It's because they believe their support for genocide will leave a permanent wound on the party for at least 3-4 election cycles. In that if a third party gets 5%, which is still a long stretch, but if they get that 5%, they are entitled to federal and state funding to compete across the country, which essentially multiplies their ability to compete by at least 10, 15, 20 times. This third party, if it gets the 5%, who are the voters that it's going to, which party will it take voters from? It won't take from the Republicans, it will take from the Democrat, which means that because of their unwavering support for genocide, they won't be punished just in the elections. They will be punished for a generation, because now you have a third option that is hemorrhaging, the third party is now hemorrhaging those votes that is going to this third party, meaning they're no longer facing off just against the enemy in front. They're now having to look behind them as well, because Zionism was such a political liability, it broke their ability to unite everyone under an umbrella that is needed for them to win the elections. And this is what I say when you said, what is the role of the Muslims? Gaza will decide these elections. It is so tight. I have the polls here on the phone, someone sent to me earlier. It's 48%, 47%. 48%, 47%, 49, 47, 51. It's so tight, so tight. Which means that those few thousand Muslims could decide it and flip it either way. Zionism is terrified that a president will lose because they supported Zionism. And they are hoping that Muslims will rescue Zionism by forgiving genocide. They are hoping that Muslims will rescue Zionism by being scared of the other side. That Muslims will rescue Zionism and affirm that even if you support a genocide, you can win a second term, because the only way they can win a second term is if Muslims deliver it. The Zionism is gambling that Muslims are the ones who will say to the genociders that yes, you supported a genocide, but that's not a deal breaker, here, have it. Yes, you slaughtered 240,000 my brothers, but yes, you, and the Zionists will say, phew! Can you imagine if they lost after supporting genocide? They would have said Zionism is a liability. Jazakum Allah khair, Muslims. Thank you so, I don't know what the Hebrew version is. But thank you very much, Muslims, for, we were panicking. We thought we might become alive. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for forgiving genocide. Thank you for being scared. Thank you for being people of Wahan. Thank you, because we feared you would be people of principle. We feared you would break our invincibility. We feared you would break our lobbying power. We feared that you would break the idea that Zionism equals victory, but you rescued us because you were scared. Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom. Longer than 20 pages. So I told him, Habibi khalas, age of movies, we're in movies. The movie The Message by Mustafa Aqad. The scene where Abu Talib is dying. Abu Talib, the leaders of Quraysh, they say to Abu Talib, tell your nephew to stop talking. Tell your nephew to stop protesting. Tell him to stop boycotting. Tell him to stop raising his voice. Tell him to keep it in his home. Tell him keep it in his masjid. Tell him keep it in his room. Tell him keep it in his community the way the Christians do. Tell him keep it personal between him and Allah. Keep it just between him and personal stuff. Tell him to stop coming out to society and saying it. And Abu Talib says, all he wants from you is one word, one word. And Abu Sufyan, look what he says. Abu Sufyan doesn't say like the Muslim who doesn't believe in the power of Allah the way Netanyahu does. Abu Sufyan says, if all he wanted was a word, we would have given him 100 words. The problem is the word that he wants. The word he wants is making Kamala Harris's daughter raise money for Palestine while her mother supports the Zionists. It's making these right-wingers start saying things that were taboo about Israel before. Ta-Nehisi Coates, who had nothing to do with Palestine, he went there for 10 days. 10 days, and he ended up writing a book, and now he's going from network to network, telling the whole of America, guys, you need to see what I saw. I know apartheid, I saw it. I know Jim Crow, it's there. And the Israelis are like, Yallah, Uskut, shush, Ta-Nehisi. Why are you? Look how Allah uses the vehicles. But what made Ta-Nehisi flip? Did anyone put a gun to his head? Did anyone buy him? The da'wah flipped his heart so much that he's willing to go against the system. He believes the message is so powerful. The system doesn't scare him the way it scares the Muslim. The two-party system doesn't scare him the way it scares the Muslim. Look at the power of da'wah. The reason Quraysh repressed the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was because in the 13 years they could not understand how even though they had the F-16s, even though they had Congress in their pockets, even though they had the most powerful lobbying power, even though the Quraysh, they had all of their material superiority, they could not understand why these hearts were flipping and going towards someone who didn't have the same material superiority. Why is it that the Prophet, read the seerah, open the eye, I beg you, open the other eye, open it, stop reading it like a Dajjal. When they go to Abyssinia to Najashi, Najashi is the NATO ally of Quraysh. He's the NATO ally. Najashi has no material reason to reject their request. In fact, what he initially says is, Quraysh are my friends, they are my NATO partner, they are my diplomatic partner. I didn't know you had a crisis, here, take them. And then Ja'far ibn Abi Talib says, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, you have to give me the right to speak. Najashi says, okay, yalla, you have a few minutes to say what it is. Now, in the movie, they speak English, but there are American subtitles in case it's difficult to understand. But in any case, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, when he delivers his remonstration, we worship gods of wood and stone, elements of our own manufacture. The rich neglect the poor, and the act by which a brother lifts his fellow brother up is described by them as upsetting social order. To this inhumanity, a prophet has come. Najashi at the end, what does he say? What does Najashi say? Najashi comes out and he says, not for a mountain of gold will I hand them over to you. Macron turns around and says, we need an arms embargo. Did you see Netanyahu's press conference yesterday where he said, why are our Western Western allies now calling for an arms embargo. Why are they calling for an arms embargo? It's because of you, ya ibadallah. Because you keep raising your voices. Dawah is powerful. Dawah is strong. Dawah makes a difference. The protest makes a difference. Raising awareness makes a difference. And I'll finish on this final point. For those who have the ball, to make sure we have no ball to play with. If you don't like to believe in Allah's power, to believe in the power of da'wah, to believe in the seerah and its ability to transform society. If you want to insist that seerah is a book of fables and fairy tales and salat is only about a spiritual boost. The reason why I resent the idea of spiritual boost is I was in Bosnia, Sarajevo. I promise I'm nearly through, I promise. I was in Bosnia, Sarajevo, and for those of you who've been, many of you will visit the Ghazi Huzr Bey Masjid. Not too far from it is the Emperor's Mosque that Muhammad al-Fatih built. There is an imam there who starts every khutbah with Alhamdulillah alladhi fadala al-mujahideen ala al-mutaqa'ideen. Praise be to Allah who elevated those who strive for the sake of Allah over those who sit and do nothing. So I said to him at the end of the khutbah, I said, Sheikh, that's a very provocative way to start a khutbah. He said, but it's true. Hassan was there. That's how he started the khutbah. Yeah, you were there. So afterwards, I said to him, but you know, we are trying to make dua, do what we can. He says, we don't make proper dua as an ummah. I said, what do you mean? He goes, we think good du'as, except sincere dua, is when we're like, Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. And I said, but Sheikh, that's a bit harsh. He said, no. Have you ever been in a masjid where you've seen people pray for rain? I said, yeah. He said, how do they pray for rain? I said, the imam makes a wonderful, eloquent dua, and we go, ameen, behind him. He said, exactly, but do you ever see an umbrella inside the masjid? Do you ever see an umbrella? Any one of them bring an umbrella with them. Dua is not how you feel spiritually. The sincerity of dua is the belief that Allah can deliver. If they believed Allah could deliver the dua, they would have all brought umbrellas on the basis that Allah would deliver the rain and has the ability to respond immediately. But their action betrays the limitations, and that dua has become protocol and ritual, not something that is sincere. But the reason why I finish on this point is because, ya ibadallah, remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give you the outcome that you want. You are not better than Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh spent 900 years, only minority believed. Nuh got to a stage where he said, Rabbi inni da'awtu qawmi laylan wa nahara wa lam yazidhum du'ai illa firara. I call on my people day and night, and every time I call on them, they run away from me and they put their fingers in their ears and they cover their faces. Wastakbaru istikbara. They treat me with arrogance. You are not better than Hud alayhi salam to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But ya ibadallah, my cohort, and I know we need to pray Isha, so I'm going to finish with Sahih non-Muslim, only because I find it's more effective with Muslim audiences. Non-Muslim audiences, they're all opening the Quran because they are fascinated by the resistance of the Palestinians. I think when they read the ayah, it means more to them than it does to us who are born Muslim. Ma'al asaf. So I'll finish with Sahih non-Muslim here, and I hope one day I can come and rely on Bukhari and Muslim for politics, but just not the way we're raised. But in Sahih non-Muslim, Michael Hart, Book of Historians, and Michael Hart, he wrote a book, The 100 Most Influential People in History. And at number 1, who did he put? Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Why? He wrote that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did not conquer as many lands as Alexander the Great. He did not conquer as many lands as Genghis Khan. He didn't become a superpower like Rome or Persia. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and I'm adding to Michael Hart's description, didn't see Al-Aqsa liberated. He didn't see the da'wah being given in the English language. He didn't see the da'wah being given in the Bosnian language or in any other language. He didn't see Islam in New York or in California, akhir al-dunya, ends of the earth, or Sydney, that's really akhir al-dunya. He didn't see it. But what Michael Hart was saying was, he didn't need to, because his magnificence was not his material achievement. His magnificence was that he inspired a spirit with his message that meant that even after he passed away, his companions would move, or even though he was not among them, they would move for him though he was not among them. They would move based on his promise. They would move based on his message. And the next generation would move even though they never met the Prophet. Even though they never saw the Prophet, they would move. And the next generation would move. And it would move. No man inspired a message that meant 1400 years later, there would be Muslims gathering in New York for no other reason than La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. There would be Muslims gathering for no other reason than to discuss how to uphold justice, because the promise he gave them of Jannah was so sweet that they are prepared to struggle for that in the way that the Algerians did when they kicked out the French after 132 years. They didn't say we did it. They said, oh Muhammad, Mabruk Ali, congratulations Prophet Muhammad, we returned Algeria to you. And the French said, you never met the guy, why are you fighting for him? Michael Hart said no one inspired this message. And this is the example that, and the narrator goes that by the time Muhammad al-Fatih got to Constantinople, the areas all around it had already become Muslim, because of the 7 generations before that had made the attempt, that had gone out to give da'wah, that had gone out to try, that had gone out, and even though they didn't see the outcome, it didn't stop them moving, they kept going. Without these 7 generations, Muhammad al-Fatih doesn't take Constantinople, he doesn't fulfill the hadith without the generations that came before. Ibadallah, today maybe all you can do is protest, maybe all you can do is boycott, although for me that's big, but maybe for you, you want to use the word only. For you, you can only protest, for you, you can only boycott, but do not insult this deen by saying it has no impact when you are seeing right-wingers, left-wingers, America's greatest thinkers coming out becoming pro-Palestine for no other reason than when you shared, retweeted, when you did those videos, when you protested, when you boycotted, you had enough of an impact that it went onto their radar, and when it went onto their radar, they started asking questions, and when they started asking questions, the Zionists panicked and told them don't read, but they continued reading, and now they are the ones standing against the Zionists. They are the ones not scared of it. But what made that happen? It was your da'wah. Don't give it up. If you have any opportunity to raise awareness, do it. Allah said, فَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ. Those who do even an atom of good deed, Allah sees it. And remember these protests in particular, Ya ibadallah, protests in London, in Rome, in Berlin, in New York. You know, Sydney encampment began because of what you did here in America. I was there, I spoke at the encampment. I told them, why'd you guys start? They said, we saw the videos of what they did to them in America. We saw what they were doing in America, and they inspired us. Look how the message travels. We saw what they were doing in America, so we decided to do it in Sydney. You are not in one bubble. The whole world is watching you. Raise your voices. Go to protest. Raise the voice of haqq. And the reason Islam is the fastest growing religion is because you refuse to be quiet. You refuse to stop moving. Every time you move, you inspire something in the fitrah, and the fitrah is resonating. Al-hal la yadum, the status quo doesn't last. America has not always been the same way. They used to put black people in as slaves. They used to have cotton plantations less than 100 years ago. The reason it doesn't exist today is not because they decided it was wrong. It's because the community kept moving, because they kept mobilizing, because they kept the cause alive, because they kept it in the hearts of every individual. And that means the water kept flowing, and when the water flows, it starts getting faster, and when it gets faster, it starts crashing, and when it crashes, it becomes cleaner. Society is always changing, the system is always changing, but there's a condition for it to change. It requires you to move. Allah said, take one step, I take 10. Come to me walking, I come running. Walk, ya ibadallah. And as Martin Luther King said, and this is the final line, he said, Martin Luther King, and I love this phrase, it's very Islamic. He said, if you can fly, fly. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by God, keep moving. Don't stop, ya ibadallah. For Allah rewards you for every step you take, every second you struggle. Because He said, وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةَ وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهُ وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ مَشْكُورًا. Those who strive for the sake of Allah, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ, they are striving on the basis of the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah will deliver if they move. Allah will amplify their power if they move. Allah will increase their power if they move. Allah will amplify their effort if they move. They move on this basis. Allah doesn't say the outcome is rewarded. He says the striving is rewarded. Keep striving. May Allah use us as the vehicles, inshallah. And if you don't turn up to that protest tomorrow, then Allahumma inni da'awtu qawmi laylan wa nahara wa lam yazidhum du'ai illa.
Jazakumullahu khairan, Brother Sami Hamdi.